Should Trump invade Venezuela? That is the topic for this video. Hi, my name is Alan. Welcome to my channel. For those of you who are new, my channel is dedicated to me talking about my faith and how my faith helps to inform a lot of the public policies that I like to advocate for in hopes of making this a better world. So yeah, for those of you who've been tuning into the news, you would know that Trump has basically indicated that he would want to invade Venezuela and overthrow their administration. He's accusing them of being corrupt and being responsible for trafficking illegal drugs into the United States. You know, if you've been following the news, you would know that Trump's administration has been bombing a lot of boats off the coast of Venezuela that have been accused of, transporting illegal drugs intended for the United States. Trump has also sent a Navy fleet to the border of Venezuela, as well as several fighter jets. And so it really does seem like Trump has every desire to invade Venezuela. And it seems to be one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, it seems to be over the issue of drugs. I did a little bit of research and found out that Venezuela is considered one of the main transit hubs for the trafficking of illegal drugs to the United States. And illegal drugs is a major issue here in the United States. Statistics show that in the past year alone, over 100,000 Americans died as a result of overdosing on drugs. 70,000 of those lives that were lost were due to overdosing on fentanyl alone. That is a major crisis. I mean, just imagine if a country invaded the United States and killed 100,000 Americans. We would be up in arms. That country would be wiped off the face of the earth. And for reference, the September 11 attacks killed about 3,000 Americans, and yet that was justification enough to invade Iraq and Afghanistan. But if drugs is the main issue, there are actually other countries in South America that should warrant more attention. For example, Colombia produces the largest amount of cocaine that's smuggled into the United States, and Mexico produces the largest amount of fentanyl that's smuggled into the U.S. Me personally, I feel like we should be bombing the hell out of Mexican cartels instead of focusing on Venezuela. But that leads me to believe that there's some kind of ulterior motive going on here with the Trump administration. And so I recently came across a journalist who did some research and discovered that although the United States has significantly increased its oil production over the last couple of years, the type of oil that it produces is largely from fracking. And fracking produces a type of oil that is a lighter substance. And many of our oil refineries, primarily those that are in Texas, are not able to process shale oil. They're only able to process a thicker type of oil like crude oil. And interesting enough, Venezuela only produces this thicker type of oil. And Venezuela also happens to be possess the largest oil reserves in the entire world. So basically, it seems as if the Trump administration has this ulterior motive to go after the largest oil reserves in the world. And on this channel, I like to talk about a Bible story or Bible verse that can relate to the topic at hand. And I came across this Old Testament story about King Ahab and Queen Jezebel and a man named Naboth. Now, Naboth was the owner of a vineyard that the king and queen wanted to take possession of. But when they asked Naboth, Naboth refused to hand it over because he said this was a vineyard that had been passed down from generation to generation in his family. But instead of respecting Naboth's wishes, the king and queen decided to plot against him, and they came up with false accusations, accusing him, and Naboth, unfortunately, was ultimately stoned to death. Unfortunately for the king and queen, however, word got out to the prophet Elijah, and Elijah visited them and cursed them. So basically, this story teaches us a lesson about how there are consequences for being dishonest and being deceptive. The Trump administration has good justifications for why it's contemplating invading Venezuela, because Venezuela is one of the largest trafficking hubs for illicit drugs. Its government is corrupt. And by all accounts, its President Maduro should be overthrown. Um, but, just be honest with the American people. I believe that's the best way to go. There are also geopolitical justifications for taking over the largest oil reserves in the world, especially when you think in terms of how that might impact your relations with Russia, who is now at war with Ukraine, as well as China. And so I feel like it's just better to be upfront and honest with the American people and trust that the American people are smart and understand that this is in America's best interest. But, with that said, I also think that we have to be really cautious about getting involved again in regime change. You know, we should have learned our lesson with most recently Iraq and Afghanistan. We lost about 6,000 American soldiers to those wars. And can we really say that they were justified, that they died for a worthy cause? I don't think any one of us who can reflect back on what we've done there can say that that is in fact the case. So we need to be very careful about putting American soldiers' lives at risk for something that seems to be quite suspect. So to answer the question at the start of the video, do I think that Trump should invade Venezuela? The short answer, I would say, is no. I do think that there are some good justifications, if there are. For example, there are geopolitical justifications for going after the largest oil reserves in the world. There are good reasons for stopping Venezuela from being an illicit drug trafficking hub to the United States. But I don't think that there are good enough reasons to risk American lives. I think that we could be more creative in coming up with ways diplomatically and ways to strong arm Venezuela into doing what we want. But for oil, for what, man? We're living in a time right now where oil is no longer going to be the primary energy source. So I just don't see there being a good justification for going after Venezuela's oil. We don't need to do that, especially putting American lives at risk. For what? But thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you think I'm right, if you think I'm really wrong, let me know. But thank you and God bless.